Shadow of the Colossus is not fun to play. The button mapping, which buttons do what, is atrocious on all 4 variations it gives you. The camera constantly repositions itself so you can't see where you're going. And aggro, your horse, is incredibly frustrating to control. Riding aggro feels like riding a bike where you can't steer if you're in 3rd gear or higher. And every time you turn the handlebars there's a 5-second delay and then it overcorrects. For a game in which 1/3 of the gameplay is riding on a horse, this is quite unfortunate to say the least. However, despite how not fun the game is to actually play, I absolutely love Shadow of the Colossus. I think it's the closest a video game has ever gotten to traditional art, and while it's less Rembrandt and more college art major's final project, it's still a very uniquely interesting experience. The most interesting things in Shadow of the Colossus all happen at either the beginning or the end, and I'm going to be talking about the end. Really the final piece of gameplay before the credits roll and you get the ending cutscene, so spoilers ahead for those of you who still wish to experience it without them. Although frankly, watching your favorite Let's Player go through this one will be an equal experience to actually playing it yourself. So let's take a look at the final gameplay experience of Shadow of the Colossus real quick. Okay, so if you've heard anything about this game, that probably doesn't look very much like what you were expecting. But before we can talk about what this snippet of gameplay means and why it's important, we have to put it in context. So let's do that. Shadow of the Colossus is the second game created by Gen Design, who were known as Team Ico while they were first-party developers under Sony. It's the spiritual successor to their first work, Ico, and a spiritual predecessor to their newest game, The Last Guardian. These games all have the same stylistic flourishes and high art aesthetics, as well as a couple of notable links to each other that cause them to be classified as a series, despite being only loosely connected in terms of story and setting. All 3 have achieved cult status in one form or another, with Shadow of the Colossus being regarded as the best one. This is due largely to Ico being horrendously underplayed and even unknown by a majority of gamers, and The Last Guardian being in development hell for so long that players got overhyped for it, and ended up disappointed when it shared many of the problematic aspects of its predecessors, and didn't live up to being the messiah of digital interactive entertainment. Putting aside the huge advantage this gave Shadow of the Colossus, I think there's still good reason for it to be so highly regarded despite the stupendous lack of fun game in the game. Shadow of the Colossus has a large open world for you to pilot your directionally challenged horse around, and it really is breathtaking. The camera that hampers gameplay so effectively also creates much better shot composition than you would normally see in other video games. And the vast emptiness of the landscape leads flawlessly into the fights with the massive colossi, who dominate the area to such an extent that it's often difficult to see the entirety of one on screen at any given time. Which is good, because along with riding around on your horse, fighting these things is really the only other thing to do in this game. But more than anything else, I think it's the final section of the game, the storytelling and the story itself, that really make it so well loved. Upon launching Shadow of the Colossus, you were greeted with just under 14 minutes of opening cinematics that set the stage for your journey through the forbidden lands of the Colossi. You play as Wander, a young boy with a sword, a bow, and a horse, on his journey to revive Mono, a girl who was killed because of a cursed fate. Wander takes Mono's corpse to an altar in the Forbidden Lands as he's heard of a being there who has power over life and death, and as luck would have it, the rumor is at least partially true, and Wander meets the disembodied twin voices of Dorman. Dorman tells the boy to go slay 16 giant monsters to break 16 giant statues, and then Mono will be brought back to life. Wander is all ready to go monster hunting, but before he leaves, Dorman warns that the consequences for Wander will be high, and that humans don't come back to life for good reason, and a bunch of other foreshadowy stuff about how maybe this isn't the greatest idea in the world. But Wander, being the oblivious protagonist that he is, completely ignores all the obvious warning signs as well as literal warnings, and crosses that threshold right into a Rota Trials. 16 dead giant monsters and 1 sacrifice of your horse later, several men from wherever Wander came from have chased him down to warn him that what he's doing is bad, and stop him. But of course, they're too late, and Wander kills the final Colossus just as they arrive. Turns out, when literally everyone in the world agrees that what you're doing is bad, they're probably right, because whoops! Turns out Dorman wasn't really telling the whole truth. The lands are forbidden because Dorman was so powerful the humans needed to seal them away, using the 16 Colossi as locks on Dorman's power. And what did you just do again? Oh right, break all the locks, allowing Dorman to escape and regain their power. This leads to Dorman taking over the body of Wander, which has become more and more corrupted by the essence of Dorman with every Colossus you've killed, and you end up transforming into the beast from the clip I showed you at the beginning. So now let's talk about why this tiny section of gameplay is so effective. For the last 6 to 8 hours, you've been climbing these giant monsters and stabbing them in the brain to revive some girl that is apparently worth all this effort. You've given up everything, your future, your home, and even your only companion, Aggro, who dies to get you to the final Colossus. Throughout this time, you've met and fought 16 Colossi, all of whom have shown some form of humanity before you extinguish them. Most of the Colossi aren't even hostile towards you when you meet them, and they often lose interest in you during the fights. Of the few that are immediately hostile, one of them becomes absolutely terrified around fire, a fear you exploit to kill it. And many Colossi only allow you to climb and ultimately kill them because they're curious about you, or are reacting to wounds you've inflicted upon them. And now, after all of the fights where you've used your superior agility and quick wits to your advantage to end these mainly peaceful gentle giants to achieve your seemingly righteous goal, you become the monster, being killed for a noble cause, and you try to defend yourself. But more than that, you try to kill that which would kill you. Your attacks are slow and clumsy, you find it hard to move due to your size, and the quick little humans run around and shoot at you with their arrows, all while refusing to die no matter how many times you hurt them, just as you did to the Colossi you've spent the rest of the game hunting. Until ultimately, you fail, and the humans steal both your and Dorman's essences away, and destroy the path to the Forbidden Land so no one can make the same mistakes you did. This kind of show-don't-tell that maximizes your empathy by very literally putting you in the shoes of your enemies and making you live as them is almost entirely unique to video games due to the way they're experienced. And yet, so few games even try to do it, let alone successfully pull it off. Shadow of the Colossus isn't a long game, and it isn't a very fun one either. But it achieves greatness in the medium, in ways that so few others even try. Eco and The Last Guardian get you to appreciate them in similar ways, but their emotional resonance is in different areas, so even they don't quite evoke as much of a response as Shadow of the Colossus. This kind of devotion to creating art out of a medium that's so easily immersive is something that's increasingly rare but always worth praising.